Several of us from this church recently traveled to Israel, Palestine. And on that trip, no one that we heard from was more moving than Bassam, who is with us today. And we are also so delighted to get to meet his partner and his fellow peace activist, Robbie Demelin, as well. And so we welcome both of them today. They will tell their own stories, so I certainly don't need to attempt to do it.
My name is Robbie, and I joined the Parent Circle after my son David was killed by a Palestinian sniper. When the army came to tell me that David had been killed, one of the first things that I said, apparently, which I don't remember, was, "You may not kill anybody in the name of my child." So there must have been something already there. So I'm originally from South Africa, and it in many ways influenced who I am today. I was very much involved in the anti-apartheid movement. And actually, if you would have told me when I came to live in Israel in 1967 that blacks and whites would actually find a way to sit in the same room and pragmatically decide what was good for South Africa in the long run, I would have said you were mad. There was so much fear and so much hatred and so many people running away, but nevertheless a miracle happened in South Africa. And I think that in many ways something similar could happen for us. I know it seems very far away, and I know that you think that the situation is so grim that nothing could solve it at this point. After the army told me that David had been killed, my whole life changed completely. From every priority that I had became different. And I knew almost immediately that I wanted to do something to prevent other families from experiencing this pain. I didn't know what it was yet, but I knew that I was going to do something, and I also understood very much from the beginning that the man who killed David didn't kill him because he was David. He killed him because he was a representative of an occupying army. That is not a very easy thing for me to say, but that's actually the truth. David was a student at Tel Aviv University, and he was studying for his master's in the philosophy of education. He was with many values because they were brought up, my children were brought up to be completely liberal in their thoughts, with no racist ideas. But you see, you don't know who the person is behind the gun. You might think you do, but actually you don't. And I remember when David was called to go to the reserves. You know, in Israel, young men after the army have to continue to go to the army every year for reserves. And he came to talk to me. He was teaching philosophy to young students who were going to be inducted into the army. And he said, "What shall I do, Emma? If I don't go, what will happen to my students who were going to go? Is that the right example? And if I don't go, what will happen to my soldiers?" Because he was the officer. "And if I do go, I will treat people with dignity, and so will all my soldiers." You see, you don't know who that person is. It took me a long time to realize what he was saying, because I was filled with a sense of dread that something would happen. And after David was killed, I went to give a talk at the American Embassy, and there was a Palestinian sitting in the audience, and he kept looking at me, and I knew he wanted to say something. Very often people are wary of saying something to bereaved parents. They don't know exactly how to relate to them. So I went to talk to this Palestinian, and I said to him, "What?" And he said, "I want to tell you that the day before your son was killed, I drove through the checkpoint, and this very tall young man came to the car and said, 'I have to check your papers, it's my duty. I'll do it as fast as possible.'" And they got into a conversation. And he said, "The next day that I heard that your son had been killed, I was so sorry. Do you see, that is actually the essence of everything that we do in the parent circle. That is to find the humanity in the other. And the minute that the Palestinian discovered David's humanity, and vice versa, that is when he could see him as a human being. And that is for a Palestinian to say, I'm sorry for the death of an Israeli soldier, is really the essence of everything we try to do as a group. We are 600 families. Everyone has lost an immediate family member to the conflict. And we think and believe that the most important thing is to create a framework for a reconciliation process that should be an integral part of any future peace agreement. You see, we've had loads of peace agreements. People, it's not so far away to the White House lawn, where people stood and hugged each other and signed papers, and it had nothing, politicians did that, had nothing to do with the people. And why would a Palestinian suddenly think that peace was upon us when he had no country or no citizenship of anything? So we need to have this reconciliation process, and actually that's the purpose of the parent circle. It's to prepare people for this long-term goal. It's not easy. We're not in an equal situation. You know, we have 2 offices in the parent circle. We have 2 of everything. It's like Noah's Ark. But in the long run, that's the most dignified thing that we can do in a very undignified situation. So a religious Jewish man came to talk to me and said, would I like to come to a weekend in the old city of Palestinian and Israeli bereaved families? And I said, thank you very much, no. Because I didn't want to spend time with bereaved families. I thought I've got enough stuff of my own. But of course I didn't realize that those were the people that would understand me the most and that I could feel much at home with than anybody else. And eventually I went to this weekend and I looked into the eyes of the Palestinian mothers who'd lost children, and I realized that the tears are the same color. I realized that we share the same pain. And if we could harness that pain to make a difference, then surely that would be an extraordinary example to other people. And I started to travel all over the world, and it was lucky because I have English, and you know. One night I came home and there was a knock on my door, and it was the army again. And you get this terrible flashback when you open the door and you see 3 soldiers standing there. And I thought, what now? And they came to tell me that they'd caught the man who killed David. Now, some people might think that that was, that I would feel good about that and that I would jump around my lounge and say, yay, revenge, revenge. But actually that became the most difficult part of my whole journey, really, because then I had to see if I mean what I say. You can walk around the world and you can talk about love and peace and reconciliation, but do you mean it? You know, and it's not an exam for people outside of my life, it's for me. Can I, in integrity, go around like this morning and talk to you if I'm not willing to walk the talk? And I didn't sleep for something like 3 months. It was just every night this would go around in my brain all the time. And then I decided to write a letter to the family of the sniper who killed David. His name is Thaya. And 2 Palestinians from our group took the letter to the family, where I told them who I was and who David was and what we were doing in the parent circle, and that we owed it to each other to meet, because we owed that also to our grandchildren and our children. Of course, they were very shocked to get this letter, as you can well imagine, and they promised to give it to their son in jail. This didn't happen. And every day I went dashing down to the post box expecting to get a letter, which never came. It took something like 2.5 years, and one night I got a call from a friend in America, and she said, he has written to you over the Palestinian wire, which is called Ma'an. You know, it's a very important media site, which almost every Palestinian would have seen. But the Palestinians in the parent circle are worried about you seeing this because it's not a nice letter. And do you want to see it? So I said, of course I want to see it. So they sent it. And I translated it with Google, which is not a good idea. But nevertheless, I got the gist. And he said that I'm mad and I should stay away from his family. And that he killed 10 people because, along with David, he killed another 9 people because he wanted to free Palestine. But you see, I knew something else. I knew from his parents that when he was a small child, he saw his uncle very violently killed by the Israeli army. And then he lost 2 uncles in the second uprising, the second Intifada. So he went on a path of revenge. Of course, he didn't realize there's no revenge for a lost family member. I would do anything, I promise you, anything, to spend 1 minute with David. But that's not possible. So what do you do instead? In any event, after I got that letter, something extraordinary happened. I realized that I wasn't a victim, and that I had done something to free myself of being a victim of the circumstance. I was no longer, I was free, and it didn't matter what Thaya did. He didn't have to be repentant, he didn't have to do anything, it's just me that has to be at peace with myself. It doesn't mean that I didn't want to complete this whole relationship with him, but it did mean that I could continue with the work because I had taken that step. I went back to South Africa to look at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to see what lessons we could learn. And I met the most extraordinary people, and I'm grateful in my life now for all these extraordinary people that I meet along the way. I cannot, if we had another couple of hours, I would tell you the stories of all these extraordinary people who have gone beyond this pain to do things in the world to make a difference. And so I met, one of the people that really influenced me was a woman called Jin Fourie. She is a white Afrikaans lady whose daughter had been killed by UPLO, which was the African National Congress's military wing. And she went to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission and she said to the people who killed her daughter, I forgive you. And I wanted to know what the meaning of forgiving is. What do you mean when you say you forgive? Do you give up your right to justice? Is it okay what the person did? Can they do it again? Should you forget? What does it mean? And each of you should really think about this for yourself. It doesn't only happen, it happens in daily relationships all the time. What is forgiving? And I asked priests, and I asked rabbis, and I asked imams, what is their definition of forgiving? And I must say, and I don't know, this may be not the right place to say it, but nobody could come up with anything that really was powerful enough for me to associate with. But Jin Fourie, who said, I forgive you, said that forgiving is giving up your just right to revenge. And I thought, wow, that really means something. And also if you understand why, it changes a lot of the aspect of what happened. Then I met the man who actually sent the people to kill her daughter. And I thought, wow, I'm going to really not like this man. He turned out to be the most extraordinary man with such integrity. And he said, by her forgiving me, she has released me from the prison of my inhumanity. And I thought that was so extraordinary. And please, don't give up on us. It is terribly important that you support peacemakers on the ground. I mean that you be there from a moral point of view, to be with people who want to make a difference. Because our lives are very intertwined with what you will do. And you are also very much concerned with what we will do. It can change everything in the world. So thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. Do you know what's the meaning of Assalamu alaikum? It's peace upon you. This is how Muslims say hi or hello. Martin Luther King says, people hate each other because they fear each other. And they fear each other because they don't know each other. And they don't know each other because they are often separated one from the other. It starts and ends with education. If you know more, you act better. If you don't know, you are a victim to your narrative, to your story, to your past. So I found myself as a 12 years old kid in this holy land, trying to find the right way to act in this very complicated conflict. I found myself as a fighter or a warrior. With other 5 kids, I create local military group, and our goal was to raise the Palestinian flag, which was a crime in that time, because we noticed that those strangers, very strange soldiers, who speak a very strange language, they get crazy when they see the flag. So we want to make them crazy. This is our way of struggle. At the age of 16, we find some old weapons in a cave near where I born in a cave, with 2 grenades and Kalashnikov and many military materials that we don't know how to use it. 2 of my group used the 2 grenades against Israeli patrols. And of course, in that time, no one killed, no one injured, because they don't know how to use it in a professional way, luckily. At the age of 17, we have been arrested. We are all in the 17 years old, and the first one gets 21 years in jail, 19, 15, 14, and I get 7 years. In jail, you became a fighter, you became a warrior, you justify why you're here for 7 years. I learned that if you know your enemy, you can defeat him or you can kill him. If you just hate him, you will kill yourself. And because my enemy speaks Hebrew, I start to study Hebrew. I watch a movie about the Holocaust in jail. And for us as Palestinians, we don't know anything about the Holocaust. We deny it. We think it's a big lie for those Zionists to bring more support from America and Europe and to justify their occupation against our land and our people. But I want to enjoy seeing this movie as kind of revenge, to see someone torture those Jewish, kill them, even if it's a movie, because I'm in their jail. And after a few minutes, I found myself crying, get sympathy with those innocent people, civilians. And the most painful thing for me was, according to my culture as an Arab man, according to my religion as a Muslim, to see people naked, and especially women. And I say maybe I cry for myself, because during the investigation, they take off my clothes and I cannot do anything. So I get sympathy with those innocent people. But I was very angry because I didn't see them resist or fighting back. You are standing in front of a brutal Nazi, and he's going to kill you for sure. You need to do something to fight. And because I'm a fighter, so I need everyone to be a fighter against injustice everywhere. It's not easy to understand the pain of your enemy. You refuse that, because you are in their jail, under their occupation, and to justify your actions against this enemy, you need not to recognize his humanity or his pain. Even those Jews who passed away 70 years ago, and they never came to Palestine, they never occupied us, including 1.5 million kids. It's not easy to empathy or sympathy with them. All these years, this movie, always in my mind, I want to understand if it's really happened, if it's a big lie. Until 2011, I finished my master's degree about the Holocaust. And I visit death camps. But it started as a a tool of struggle to know your enemy in order to know how to defeat or to kill him. It's a long 7 years full of torture and hatred. They teach us how to hate them from their behavior. They teach us how to become more determined to continue our way. Our way is the armed struggle against this brutal occupation. It's very easy to understand what's the meaning of armed struggle, which you call it terrorism, and some people call it violence. Armed struggle is something moral, and this is what we teach ourselves in jail. Their goal is to kill our humanity because they receive us as killers, terrorists with blood on our hands, and they are not allowed to talk to us. And for us, we recognize their goal. Our goal is to survive and to protect our humanity because we are human beings and because we are freedom fighters. In order to continue our way is to achieve our goal, which is ending the Israeli occupation and free Palestine and free our people, which is something moral. Even if you committed to crime sometimes, it's by mistake. It's not your nature to kill civilians. I get released in 1992. I still believe in armed struggle as the only way to face those enemies. But 93 we have Oslo Agreement. So we understand that peace is possible, and especially through negotiation, because all the time we have to kill each other forever. It's written in the Quran and in the Bible. We never read it in any book. But we decide that because we are very frustrated. We think our conflict is the unsolvable. So it's unique. And in one point, people like me, who spend their life in jail, the victims of this conflict, understand that peace is possible and negotiation can help us. Why I spent 7 years while our leaders can sit down and achieve such agreement. So I realized that my son, it's not necessary to go to the Israeli jails for 7 years to prove that I love Palestine. I don't need to die in order to prove that I love my country. I am a fighter. We need to change our way. End of 1993, I get married because I feel stability. Finally, you can create your own normal life. And I start to have kids, and suddenly I have 6 kids. Suddenly. So your kids and your wife and your family became your Palestine, your homeland, your work. And because I have a very bad life, I want to do everything possible to protect my family, which is very painful because you cannot protect yourself, and of course you cannot protect your kids. I start to be active in the Palestinian side without any connection with the Israelis, for my benefit, for the Palestinian interest, that we need to change our way to achieve our goal. And in that time I believe that the Israeli people must be responsible for their own occupation. They occupied us for their peace, for their security, and we are fighting them, we are killing them because of this occupation. So this is the source of violence, this is the source of terrorism. They need to support us in order to end their own occupation, to live in peace on both sides. If there is no occupation, there is no need to fight. In 2005, I was one of the co-founders of Combatants for Peace, which is ex-Israeli soldiers and officers who practice the occupation, and in one point they decide that we are not going to do it anymore. They send letters to Ariel Sharon, in that time was the Prime Minister, that we are not going to continue occupying another people for moral and political reasons for their side. And for me it was amazing to hear about those officers. I want to meet them, so we have this meeting in 2005. We create Combatants for Peace. It takes 1 year meetings until we get to trust each other, because it's very difficult to trust each other. We're supposed to be enemies. We did our best to kill each other from both sides. But we discovered that we are the same. We want peace and security. And of course, each one from his point of view. In the end, we are killing each other. We're losing our life. And if you're familiar with Rumi, he says, beyond right and wrong, there is a field. Meet me there. So we discovered that the field exists all the time. Sometimes it takes decades until you understand that we need to meet each other, maybe to go for another way. Our slogan was, if you want to make peace with your enemy, you need to work with your enemy. Then he became your partner. And this is our goal, to be partners for peace. We don't need to love each other. We don't need to hug each other. You can hate me forever, enjoy. We can live in peace without occupying each other. But you need to trust your partner. And here, maybe we became friends or brothers, which much better, but this is not our goal. In the same year, we became 300 members from both sides. So for me, it was an experience to learn my enemy, to understand how those people receive us as soldiers, why they occupied us. And at the same time, I get to understand how they receive us. It was a mission for us to prove. I need to prove my humanity. I need to prove that I am a human being, which is a very difficult thing. And sometimes if you survive, it's by chance, not because you are a wise man, which is not a normal life. So 2 years after Combatants for Peace, in the 16th of January 2007, an Israeli border police shoot and kill my 10-year-old daughter. Her name is Abir, in front of her school. 9:30 in the morning, she was with her sister and 2 other girls after they finished their exams in maths in that day. From a distance of 20 meters in her head from the back, Abir fell down, and 2 days later she passed away in Hadassah Hospital in Jerusalem. It's very easy to go to the easy way. We call it the lazy way, revenge, which is very human. But I didn't find the answer to kill an Israeli daughter because, as Robbie says, there is no revenge. You will never meet your daughter again. It's over. And it's nothing to do with your pain. It's ongoing pain forever, whatever you do. It's the opposite. I said one Israeli soldier shoot and kill my daughter, but more than 100 ex-Israeli soldiers from Combatants for Peace. And the parent circle build Abir's garden in her school, in her memory. And this is how to use your pain. Just 3 weeks ago, we finished the 3rd garden in Yanoun, which is near Nablus, in a very small village for kids to be kids, in a safe place to grow. I hope that you understand the process that I go through, which is a very long process, to release yourself and to give up to be a victim. When you release yourself and give up to be a victim and make peace with yourself, no one can occupy you. You are a free man. And you have no enemies at all, even in the middle of this conflict. So I met the victim who killed my daughter in the Israeli court after 3 years. And I say to him, I need you to know that you are not a hero. You are not a warrior. You didn't kill the enemy or the terrorist. You just killed 10 years innocent girl. And if you are proud of your crime, enjoy your crime. I don't ask for revenge because I don't take revenge from victims. You are the victim. And you are not less victim than your victim. Because to kill 10 years innocent girl without regret, absolutely is a victim. In any time in your life, if you recognize once that you committed to a crime and you come to ask me to forgive you, always you will find me there. I will forgive you. But not because of yourself. It's because of myself. Because I want to clean my heart from this anger, because I discovered that I belong to the mankind, and because I love my daughter very much, and because I want to protect my family and my kids. I have another 5 kids. He will come in one day, I am sure, because he's a human being. Always I said we have a very human and simple message to share with others. Nothing deserves our lives. We are more holy than any holy land. Israelis have no other place. Palestinians have no other place. We must share this land as one state, 2 states, 5 states. Otherwise, we will share the same land as 2 big graves to our kids and our people. Thank you very much.
How do the people of your own country, Palestine, Israel, feel about you? Do they feel like you've abandoned your country, or you've abandoned your people? Is there great anger towards you for this attempt to bring peace?
Thank you. Discover that it's always up to you how to manage your beliefs. In general, we are safe, and the people who even don't agree with us, and we respect them, we understand. We live in a very complicated conflict, but they respect us. They listen to us. And especially, it's not easy to argue with someone like me in the Palestinian side. I paid the highest price. I spent 7 years in my life. I lost my daughter. So I have the right to talk. And the people must listen to me, because it's not a personal problem between my family and the Jewish nation or Israeli people. I am part of this society, and it's for them. And it's kind of fighting, it's kind of struggle. So if you believe in what you are doing, you need to go on.
In any event, it's not something that everybody thinks one way or the other. It's just like here. You know, we have many supporters in Israel who have had the emotional breakthrough of recognizing humanity in the other. And we have another organization of bereaved parents who are interested in revenge and become very angry. And once I went to the television, and a man whose son was killed on a suicide bombing in Haifa would not shake my hand because he thought that I'm not loyal and I get death threats and stuff like that. But also there's a huge amount of people that do support what we're doing and recognize that probably this is the only way. I mean, I don't say we have the monopoly on truth, but it certainly seems to me that without some form of reconciliation, we cannot go on killing each other like this.
Thanks for being here. When we heard you speak Bassam in Bethlehem, I can't remember if it was you or your colleague, whose name I can't remember.
Rami.
Oh yeah, Rami.
Yeah.
One of you said something to the effect that when a child is killed, you no longer fear anything, or something like that. And could you phrase that as you said it? So that's one question. And then two, we here in the U.S., many of us have Jewish friends. Could you all suggest to us some powerful questions we can ask them to help shift their frame of thinking? Because I think sometimes, rather than my lecturing and telling them what they ought to believe, it's better to ask a really deep question to just start making them think.
I says that we have no fear. It's more we have responsibility to continue acting, and we have the moral authority as bereaved parents to raise our voice in the face of hatred and more blood. Because I said, when they kill our daughters and our sons, they kill our fear. And the worst already happened. Nothing worse than that could happen to anyone. You know, for me, the Palestinians became the Jewish of the Middle East. History repeats itself, unfortunately. And I have master's degree about the Holocaust. So I get to know the history of the Jewish people, which is not easy to grow up as a Jew everywhere around the world, even in the United States. After 3,000 years, this is the education of slavery and discrimination and racism and the Holocaust. It's not easy to trust anyone else. Yeshayahu Lubavitch, which is a philosopher, a Jewish philosopher, says the Palestinians became the Jewish of the Israelis. So we became the victim of the victim. And until the Jewish people understand and see us as their victims, we are mirrors to their suffering, it will be very difficult to shift their views. And always I said the Palestinians, they didn't kill 6 million Israelis. And the Israelis, they didn't kill 6 million Palestinians. And we can see a German ambassador in Tel Aviv. And there is an Israeli ambassador in Berlin. So we can do it.
I don't like labels, like how can we convince our Jewish friends? I know so many Jewish people in the States, and I travel here. It seems to me that this is my second home almost, and speak to so many Jewish communities going from AIPAC to J Street. So there's no common denominator amongst the Jewish people here. One common denominator is that there is a very liberal attitude to anything but Israel. That is true. Because there is a loyalty to Israel. Because that is the kind of security blanket. And once you understand that, and once you understand that actually what is happening, the occupation is killing the moral fiber of Israel. And that is something that would be very difficult for you to explain because you would close them down. But if I would come and tell you what it is for a young Jewish soldier to stand at a checkpoint, he's 18, I don't know, how many of you have been to Israel and Palestine? Okay, so when you go past a checkpoint, you look at those kids standing there with their guns. They look like, I don't know, maybe because I'm so ancient, for me, they look so young. They are children. And we give them this responsibility of having to decide whether somebody is a terrorist or not. And if this pregnant woman who comes to the roadblock, think about your own children or your grandchildren. And this kid is standing there and he has to decide whether this woman is pregnant or not. Is she carrying something underneath her dress? And what happens? The woman has the baby at the checkpoint. It happens. This is not fiction. Maybe the baby dies. That's a terrible tragedy, but please, don't imagine that this kid comes from a home where everybody said to him, go out and kill every woman you can find who's not Jewish. So what happens, this kid goes home, and he can't tell his parents what he's done. Sometimes they come to tell us. Unusual, but sometimes. And so what does he do? He takes his father's car, goes off, he gets drunk. More people are killed on the roads in Israel than in the conflict. There's more domestic violence than there's ever been. There's more violence in the schools. How can you occupy a country for 50 years and not imagine that it will affect your moral fiber? There is an answer for a community who can't see. Because to support Israel today, you have to support Israel to get out of the occupied territories. But it's how you put that. You see, you can close people down in 2 minutes if you want. Or you can come with an empathy of understanding of why. You know, I say to Israelis and to Jewish people and to Muslims who live here, and I said this when I was talking, it's easy for you not to compromise. Your children aren't dying. I mean, you go back to your house in New Jersey. One must look at all of these things, but there's no point in going to them and making them wrong. So that Bassam going to, for him to go to AIPAC is much more important than to talk to any of you. Excuse me for saying that. Because they must see his humanity. And people are not evil. I don't know if any of you have ever been to AIPAC, but if you had, I spoke there 2 years ago. And it was really strange because when they invited me, I thought it was somebody playing the fool with me to invite me to go to AIPAC. But when I walked into that huge hall, there's a hall from here to right the end of the street, 14,000 people come to this conference. You will see all along the walls, all the inventions from Israel. It's like for blind people to be able to read menus. You know, we're very good at high-tech and stuff like that. You don't see anything about the situation. So if I'm Mr. Average Joe that arrives there, why would I not think that Israel is marvelous and you give me a trip of Disneyland? But I don't want to make people wrong. I want them to have an emotional breakthrough to recognize the Palestinian humanity. I don't want to take sides. I don't want to be pro-Israel or pro-Palestine because that is dangerous. You're not helping us. What you're doing is you're importing our conflict into your country and creating hatred between Jews and Muslims. This is what's happening all over the world. Go to Europe. You know, I was in Milano at a film. There's a film that they made about me going to South Africa. And the pro-Palestinian lobby came to demonstrate against me. So what did they know? But who was the pro-Palestinian lobby? A bunch of Italians that became more Palestinian than the Palestinians. And the police came and they wanted to arrest them. And of course I said no, and I invited them to come to the movie. That's the difference in how you would approach somebody. It's no good making anybody wrong. I'm a great expert at making people wrong. You know, but I've learned over the years that it doesn't work. The thing is to get them to see the humanity, and Jews that live in the diaspora have no idea who the Palestinians are. No idea whatsoever. As many of you have no idea who the Israelis are because it's all a whole bunch of people. But there's so many different ethnic groups there, so many different kinds of people. The Russian immigrants, who are the most difficult soldiers? Who would you think would be the most difficult soldiers? They are the Russians, the Druze, and the Ethiopians. Why would you ask that? The reason that they are so difficult is because they don't yet belong. When you exclude people from your society, they become more radical. And what I'm saying is that Israelis and Palestinians are going to have to find a way to talk to settlers. Because if you exclude the settlers, and you will see this generation by generation of how the settlers, who I think abuse their children, by the way, by making them live where they live, each generation is becoming more violent. Why? You know, and so if you exclude them, that's what's going to happen. So we have to embrace people back into our society. It's really hard. You know, it's really hard because you meet very difficult people along the road. I will tell you a little story. We had, during the summer, the Parents' Circle made a tent outside the Cinematheque in Tel Aviv during the war, in the Gaza war. We knew there was going to be a war, so we created this tent where people could come to talk, people who didn't find the other like-minded people who were against war, but also people who were for the war and very much against us. So they kept coming, you know, and they were very abusive. Some people said the most outrageous things. And one night a settler came from one of the most difficult settlements, one of the most messianic, crazed settlements in the West Bank. And he was sitting there with his wife, probably at the entrance of this church, screaming at us, but really screaming for something like 20 minutes. And then we decided, okay, you know, but it's probably the first time anybody ever listened to him who wasn't in agreement with him. So then I went to talk to him and I said, listen, you know, I really understand the pain of having to leave your home because he already lost one home. He was a settler in Gaza, you know, on the border of Gaza, where the settlements left. And now you're living in another settlement. Maybe you could come to the table so that you can also be in charge of your future. And I want to tell you a story. So I told him that the night before David was killed, one of the settlers, a very religious settler, came down to the settlement, to the checkpoint, and they spent the whole night talking about the philosophy of Judaism. And David, in the middle, got up to go and make coffee for his soldiers. And this guy said, but why are you doing that? You know, they should make coffee for you. And he said, that's why I'm doing it, because that's what a leader does. In any event, I didn't know the story, of course, but what happened is the settler, after he heard that David was killed, called me. He was a little bit worried about coming to see me because I'd said all the things that I say here in the newspaper and over the media. And he phoned me and he said, could I come and see you? And I said, yes, of course you can come. And he arrived in my house. And he told me the story. He said, you know, I was so impressed by your child. So I told the settler the story, and he started to cry. And he said, won't you come to Itzhar? This is the thing that I'm trying to say and trying to do in my own life, and it's not easy, is not to shut people down, but to allow them to talk. If you were there during the last war, you would have seen the rhetoric is a mirror image, even though the leftist rhetoric is different kind of rhetoric, but it's left and right the same thing. So if you don't listen to each other, it's never going to change anything. I think that man was first.
Yes, thank you so much for coming today. You have an amazing, powerful message. As Laura mentioned at the beginning before you spoke, we have a film series coming up, and we have 21 organizations in the area that are sponsoring it. There'll be Christians, Muslims, Jews, I'm Unitarian. And one of the things that we want to have come out of that is for people to walk away with things that they can do to make a difference. What should we have them try to do?
We have a wonderful project. So we were traveling a lot in the West Bank, and we kept meeting more and more Palestinian women who make embroidery, and we wanted more women to benefit. So we created a bird. It's called the Bird of Reconciliation. If you will look on my shoe, you will see the bird. This bird is part of a project called Taking Steps, which is double meaning. And there's some magic in this bird. Because we went to New York, I was with a Palestinian mother, and we spoke on the stage in Women in the World, which is a Tina Brown. And the people who have the shoes are Meryl Streep, Helen Mirren, Barbara Streisand, Kate Blanchett. All of these people have the shoes. And then a woman came to see us in Palestine and Israel, and she comes from the European Parliament. And she listened to what we were saying and said that she wants now to launch this project at the European Parliament. So on the 15th of June, we are launching the Taking Steps project. I think you were sent a clip. I don't know if you got that clip. Okay, you're going to get a clip which will tell you, it's a beautiful, beautiful clip, which we wanted to play, but apparently there's a problem with technical stuff. So we're going to launch it in the European Parliament, which gives us an opportunity to bring hope and to tell another story of what's happening in Palestine and Israel. And then we're going to Germany to the Bundestag, where we are going to be speaking in that parliament, and women, all the women in the European Parliament and in the Bundestag will take a picture of themselves with the shoes, and the men will wear the laces. If you open up that bag, you'll see the laces say, "Taking steps in the path for peace." And so then we are actually coming to the States on the 21st of, there's always method in my madness, okay? On the 21st of September, which is International Peace Day. And if you want to do something, where's the person who wanted to do something? Okay. You could get everybody in your congregation to, on that day, wear the shoes or the patches, and to say, take a picture of themselves, send it back to our website, saying the reason I wear this is against violence in the Middle East, for reconciliation, because I support the work of the Parent Circle, whatever you want to say. You take an Instagram or a picture of yourself and you send that, and this is to create a worldwide reaction to show hope. So that's something that you can do, and of course you can all buy a bird this morning and open up our website and have a look and see about the actual work that we're doing, because we didn't tell you about the projects. I mean, we're not just two kooks that come out of the Middle East. We run some very interesting adult education programs. We run a summer camp. We also we go into schools and talk to kids of 17 And you need to understand that the average Israeli 17-year-old has never in their life met a Palestinian. So you would go into a classroom with somebody like Bassam, and suddenly these kids recognize his humanity. They would never know a story like Bassam's unless he told them. Why would they? And I go into a Palestinian classroom, and girls who are all covered, one would say, "Oh, your son deserved to die." And I looked at her and I recognized she came from a bereaved family too. And after I asked her, who she was and who she lost, and she told me her whole story, then I asked her what color were the tears. And then she got it and she came to hug me. But why would she think differently? Who does she know apart from soldiers or settlers? That's all she's ever met. So this is the whole point of this whole organization, is getting the other to understand. The narrative project that we run for adults is extraordinary. It's called History Through the Human Eye. And it's a way for us to discover each other's narrative and how you see your history.
Thank you.